Hi, now we're going to talk about the fungus among us. Very weird behavior happening on a single cell level, how it affects multicellular organisms. So, this is continuing that same theme. So, as we go along, do you know what an amoeba is? Most of us do. We kind of see these things in some kind of picture. Think of the blob, but microscopic. Basically, it engulfs its prey. And so, other than light, Proteus, Amoeba proteus, can sense chemicals, touching, temperature, even electric fields. So, it basically goes along and does its thing. We talk about its nutrition, respiration, excretion, and osmoregulation. So, it basically wanders along, finds its food, can tell the difference between, like, say, sand and food. Beyond that, it actually has many ways of getting things in. It actually ruptures its own body and lets things into itself. It can also make a food cup out of its body and form around something. And then it can also come along and just grow along both sides of something that's very large, like an algae, and just absorb it that way. It can also excrete toxic or sticky substances to keep little other bacteria from getting where it wants to, where they should go. It can actually also, when it's water, it seems to be able to open itself up and just absorb the water by having it just come into its body. And then it can, once it's got the things in its body in little vacuoles, basically areas, it will take along and bring these lysozymes, these enzymes along and just eat up the stuff. And then once it's got that, it can then the food gets absorbed by just going throughout the amoeba. The amoeba is moving constantly, and so you can have the food get where it needs to go. And then things like once it's assimilated, it becomes part of itself, and then it's getting rid of stuff. It's like, hey, I didn't really want that, and then just the vacuole will go to the back of the amoeba as it moves along and just dump it out the other side. And then you have respiration, which you and I have a mouth and lungs for. Amoeba, just diffusion. Things come in, the oxygen from the area around it just comes right through the skin. And then excretion, same thing. CO2 exits just by diffusion, just bubbles on out of the body. So it's be like you and I not having any lungs or things, it's just oxygen and carbon dioxide just coming in and out of our skin. Osmoregulation, they actually, if you put it in fresh water, it creates a vacuole to get rid of the excess water that can be absorbed by that. But when it's in salt water, those vacuoles disappear. So now we're moving on to how do amoebas talk to each other, which is a thing where it's just called kind of quorum sensing. So you can have a single amoeba kind of start talking to all the amoebas around it, and it can say things like, hey, life sucks. Let's all bond together and become a spore forming slime mold. So here they are all talking, hey, life isn't very good. We don't like this very much. And then somehow they all go, hey, you know what? Let's all go and form a multicellular organism right now together. So spores can actually go from single amoeba, cell fusion, plasmodium to sporocarp, and they actually send out spores to a different area. These are different kinds of spores. There's dog vomit slime mold, and there's slime mold time lapse. And you can watch these things on the slideshow kind of grow and do these really weird things. So we're talking about single cell organisms forming multicellular organisms. Now, these multicellular organisms can figure out their way through a maze. So we're talking about single celled amoeba becoming multicellular organisms, and then those multicellular organisms being intelligent as a multicellular organism. So they're not the only the species that can do that. Quorum sensing is multiple other species, single cell organisms talking to each other, talking amongst each other. They don't have Twitter. They don't have anything else. They're dealing with each other, some kind of chemical sense that they all can talk to each other. And it's not only is slime mold harmless, sometimes it can actually be edible. There's a thing called caca de luna, which is funny if you know Spanish, so look that up with your Spanish teacher. But it can actually be eaten as a spore mold, as a slime mold. But remember, the slime mold is actually made up of single amoebas that all talk to each other and decided to form a slime mold because of the conditions around themselves. So this is single cell organisms becoming multicellular organisms and then working as a multicellular organism as if they were one of us, the multicellular organisms that we all are. Thanks for coming.